very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce Diana Durek from Multi-Health Systems, a person who knows more about emotional intelligence than darn near any other person I've ever met. So Diana, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for that very kind introduction.
And truthful.
Well, thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now, Diana has written a chapter for the book that we have edited, the Handbook for Developing Emotional and Social Intelligence. And her chapter, written together with Wendy Gordon, is on the star performer process that's used by multi-health systems and really taken advantage of by many major companies in the world. This is a really important process. Can you tell us about star performer? What does that mean?
Absolutely. Now, I should start by saying a lot of organizations will not necessarily call it star performer.
Okay.
Psychologists will know it by the term validation study.
Okay.
A number of other researchers have referred to it as high performer studies.
Okay.
So all of those are the same processes.
Okay.
So in essence, now all of my work is with the EQI, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but there are others who may potentially use other tools like the Mesquite in this process.
Sure.
And what we're essentially doing is looking at groups of individuals within a role, looking at actual performance data. So we will have, from a statistical perspective, a clear understanding of who's performing very well in that role and potentially who is not adequately performing in that role.
Right.
Then what we do is we administer the EQI to all of those individuals, and what we're looking for are the scales that actually predict performance.
And what is the EQI? Just in case people don't know.
Oh, of course. The EQI is the Emotional Quotient Inventory.
Uh-huh.
It takes about 10 minutes to administer, 125 questions, and in essence gives us an understanding of one's emotional and social functioning, things that we know to be very predictive of workplace performance.
Right,
So
and 15 skills that really are connected with success in the workplace and all of life, right?
absolutely, and intuitively a lot of these scales make sense, I think. Things like impulse control,
Right.
absolutely, the number one derailer of executives, for example.
Is lack of impulse control.
Absolutely. Emotional self-awareness, very
Right.
foundational skill set, self-regard. So all of these scales, I often refer to them as the building blocks of other competencies that are required in the
Right.
workplace.
Like learning how to combine empathy and assertiveness and put those together when you're communicating.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I think of it this way. Now, I myself, as you know, don't do training or
Right,
facilitation or the like, but of course I watch people like you and others do this type of
Right.
extraordinary work. And what I think I've learned from all of you is that on the one hand, you can do competency development. So let's say something like conflict resolution. And you can do a very targeted approach for conflict resolution, to be sure. One of the ways that we use Star Performer is that we look at the underlying EQI skill sets that
Right.
really allow one to then use these other competencies like conflict resolution. The wonderful thing about a process like this is that you don't necessarily improve only conflict resolution,
Oh, yeah.
but you have an opportunity then of targeting all kinds of skills.
Even optimism, because you feel optimistic that you can resolve this conflict, right? Reality testing, finding how big a deal is this really, how so many of those can fit together.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, good. Yes, I think it's so powerful because so many people and organizations just say, resolve this conflict. And
Right.
if you don't parse it into what are the pieces that you need to build into resolving it, it's awfully hard to get there effectively, isn't it?
Well, most definitely, and we could literally, as you just said, run through all 15 subscales.
Right.
I mean, if you have somebody who is really struggling with, let's say, a foundational skill of stress tolerance, so you end up, it's very difficult, you know, we all know how difficult it is to get through what we need to get through when our stress is really, you know, running rampant sort of
Right.
thing. So I think that any of these skill sets potentially, working on any of them will really help us with the things we need to do in our daily lives. And
They
certainly-
co-influence a lot, don't they?
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
And so you take that wisdom with the 15 skills and how they really do interrelate in so many different ways, and you apply it to the process that you call it MHS Star Performer. And you were saying you have people take the EQI and What happens?
Well, after that, so we know, like I said, we know who the high performers are and who perhaps are in the lower performing categories, if you
Right.
will. So we run a series of statistical procedures. It may be a regression, it may be discriminant function, lest we not go too far down the statistical procedures route, but in essence what we're doing is really trying to understand which scales make a difference. You know, which scales are we able to leverage that allows one, in essence, to land in the high-performing group?
And it could be salespeople in two different organizations may need different scales?
I would say that is more than likely the case because,
Interesting.
let's say, you know, you look at what it takes to be very competent in sales in the pharmaceutical industry,
Right.
which is a very technically oriented profession. You're working with doctors predominantly, so that may be one very specific skill set as opposed to, let's say, doing sales, you know, within
Cosmetics.
yes, thank you, absolutely.
Think how different that would be.
So absolutely, clearly, these are very different skill sets. So
Yeah.
all kinds of things around the culture of an organization, where in the organizational life cycle that organization is at. A startup is clearly going to require very different skills than let's say an organization that is really in more of a maintenance mode, if you will.
And the different levels of leadership probably need different skills as highlights. Is that possible? Beginning managers compared to the senior leaders?
Do you know, that's actually a very interesting question, and I do believe we likely need more research in that area.
Interesting.
Here's what I can tell you for sure. We've certainly done star performer profiles with groups of leaders. So one that comes to mind was with Telecom New Zealand, the telecommunications company for New Zealand, and it certainly told us, in that case we were able to account for 48% of the variance in performance.
48%. That's half of their success. Could be measured by the EQI in your star performance group?
Absolutely. I was about to translate that
I'm sorry,
into
I'm
this.
sorry.
No,
It's
that's
just so exciting.
Well, you know, in other words, the way I explained it to them, what that means is that half of the skill set that those leaders need to successfully execute their leader competencies, in fact, is made up of EQI skills.
Wow.
So just imagine now how powerful that information is with respect to then their competency development. And just to be clear, I'm not suggesting by any stretch that they not do competency development. In fact, they continued all of their leader development programming. But what they did was embedded these EQI skills into that competency development in order to increase its efficacy. It was very, very powerful. It was a program that went on for many years.
Well, what you've done in your chapter, I believe, is so generous. I'm just really impressed with it, and I really want to thank you. Because you and really MHS as a whole has given a real gift by willing to just spell it out, say this is our process, this is what we do. You do it so well, and that you've shared that with people, I think is a real example of emotional intelligence.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
It was wonderful to write it down, and in fact wonderful to speak about it and be able to not only do the work but also find ways then to translate some very powerful statistical procedures and psychological concepts, but then translate them for the business world most effectively. So that for me is the really exciting opportunity.
Right.
So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. I hope a lot of people take advantage of learning about this and work with you on this, because what you give them from your statistical analysis and just overall strategic analysis in it is just so powerful.
Thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Thank you for joining us today, Diana.
It is so my pleasure, Marcia. Thank you.
You're welcome. Diana Durek from MHS has just joined us and given us so much information on the STAR Performer process that Multi Health Systems offers. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much.